The most super intelligent power, source, and force of love and creation is my shepherd. I shall not want. It maketh me to lie down in green pastures. It leadeth me beside the still waters. It restoreth my soul. It leadeth me in the paths of righteousness for its name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou anointest my head with oil. My cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall continue to follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of what I am forever. What's happening? Benton here. I looked back at yesterday's stream and it looks like the audio got all messed up. I blame StreamYard. So we're back on the earbuds. I can't tell if my wireless lavalier microphone works with StreamYard or not. I assume that it did. And also, if I have the active noise canceling option activated on the wireless mic, well, StreamYard also has that built into the software. So it could have been a double noise cancellation situation. Or then we also have the poor cell service, driving through the mountains or driving through upstate New York or wherever I was. I don't even remember. Right now, we're in the Boston, Massachusetts area, the royal we, of course. And one of these days, I'll get around to talking about the royal we and why I use that terminology. But I've hinted at it, but maybe it will happen. Parked across the street from this morning's 8 a.m. delivery. I believe they open at 7, so somewhere around 7:15, 7:30, I'll wander on over. So looking at about an hour to an hour and a half for the stream. Already getting a caffeine headache this morning. What's up, Christos? Mental pancakes in the house? Yeah, I think people, I do prefer the old vibrating icon. I think that's a lot of folks are, and I'm not speaking for the two gentlemen here, but just broadly seeing those names reminds me that I too am comforted by the StreamYard setup. So if it ain't broke, don't fix it, right? Stick with the wireless earbuds. At least I can be heard. It's a shame because I was dropping some, what I considered to be some knowledge yesterday. But, oh well, such is life. Or a slow process of death, as it may be. I think I'm going to move up to the captain's chair, perhaps. Get a little more comfortable. And yeah, we're getting the caffeine headache already. It's a bit of a bummer. Don't really want any coffee right now, but best drink it. Slavery to caffeine. Oh, and I got my Amazon order over at Staples. I was able to pull the rig onto the lot, and they had an Amazon locker inside Staples. I wonder how much Amazon pays them to do that, because, presumably there could be some conflict of interest. Hypothetically, one could have items shipped there, but then again, one can have items shipped to their home if they have one. So what's the difference? Does it even matter anymore? Probably not. Probably not. And I have a job and income, so streaming donations is not. I'm not attempting to solicit donations, but I think I'm going to have to eventually, if this continues, I'm just going to need a dedicated phone. I missed my chance. There's the same phone that I use for my main phone is on sale for like $130. I could have had it sent to the Amazon locker where I picked up my packages, but I wasn't quite. I was a little undecided. And then you're looking at $200 or more for a year of service, and then probably would end up committing to $45 a month for StreamYard, perhaps. Who knows? I know there's something of a discount for paying for the whole year, but maybe that's the move. I don't know. We'll see. It really comes down to how long can I stay on this job, because once the pocket starts getting fat, then it's like, yeah, I might as well just do it all, right? Man. So in what I received from Amazon, I got a physical SIM card for my carrier, which is U.S. Mobile, and they have I believe they're the only carrier that does this, since they have Verizon, T-Mobile, and AT&T. So now that I've installed that physical SIM card, I have Verizon on the physical SIM, and I have AT&T on eSIM. So I can, if I need to, I can use Verizon for my texting and my phone, to make phone calls. And then if Verizon is not good in a certain area, I can use AT&T for data, which is pretty cool. And it's like, I think if I pay for the whole year, it's like $7.50 more per month, something like that, to be able to switch. And I think the fancy phones will switch back and forth automatically, but mine doesn't do that. Although apparently, if I go to no signal, with the exclamation point instead of bars, I believe it will automatically switch for data, which is pretty cool. So now we have two phone numbers, but one of which I don't believe I'll be using. But that hot cell phone talk, I know how much folks enjoy that. And then having no idea what I'm going to be doing today, I have just enough time on my clock to where they're either going to want me to do a 34-hour restart now, or I have enough time to do like a 1-day load and then do a 34-hour restart. So since I'm already in the Northeast, I suspect they're going to want me to do some kind of 1-day type of deal. But we'll see. We'll see how that goes. And that's an interesting thing about truck driving. They could, right? They could have planned ahead to clue me in as to what might happen, and I could have asked, certainly. Although one of the ways my dispatcher avoids being bothered with a bunch of questions is he responds to most questions as if it's the dumbest thing he's ever heard. And I fought back one time and just sort of really let him know that I could out argue him if necessary. So I'll go back to just mostly fucking off. And then if I do need to ask something, I guess I'll just let him talk to me like as if he thinks I'm stupid. And that brings us to the stream title, which is White Nigger Coolie. It's Benton performing as, or doing business as, right? DBA, doing business as, quote, White Nigger Coolie, right? Almost like a movie. Benton starring in White Nigger Coolie. I mean, what's more White Nigger Coolie than I've already seen the sign at the receiver that says back in from the street. I mean, come on. Don't even think you're coming in here showing your face coming forward, right? Park overnight across the street and hopefully nobody wakes you up. And this is probably, this is really nice suburbs out here. Probably they've got laws and ordinances against big trucks parking on the streets, but it's nothing but businesses and industrial and, office parks where I'm at. So I think it's probably just tolerated as long as people, and it's Sunday night. It was Sunday night, so that helps to not be bothered. So we got that going for us. But yes, white nigger coolie. Bandied about by Eastern European Euro trash who, you know, but that, he's trying to get to his weekend, presumably. Get Benton loaded up, run him over the weekend, then we'll worry about it Monday morning. Does he even know what the plan is? I don't think he does. I think he's flying by the seat of his pants. I think he's a bullshit artist. And I'm a bit of a bullshit artist at times. At times, I mean, many folks are. I can't say aren't we all. That's not really the thing, but many folks are. But yeah, back to the royal we, and I haven't really heard this verbalized, but there's this BJ Investigates. I don't know if her videos have ever hit your feed. She's a former lawyer from Louisiana, I believe Northeast Louisiana, maybe. I'm not exactly sure. I've talked about her here and there, but she has a live streaming channel, That Surprise Witness, and she's been doing a lot of investigative journalism around this Mark Leta from Soft White Underbelly YouTube channel. And I'm almost certain everybody's familiar with that channel. And his involvement with a particular underage black female prostitute who was featured on his channel. And there's been shenanigans involving her. So as that coverage, and then No Jumper, if anybody knows No Jumper, a podcast with that Adam 22 or Adam 16 or whatever the fuck his name is, Bozo, and who combined pornography and podcasting at a certain point. Certainly a depraved, degenerate performer. That's irony, calling him a performer in the context of adult films. But either way, she talked about, because she was playing Mark Leda talking about, she was doing some reaction content to Mark Leda talking. And if anybody's ever seen those people in West Virginia, the inbreds in West Virginia, he's the one that first, put them online. And it ended up, in some ways, it seems to have destroyed their lives. They got an influx of money. They were able to get some money out of the deal, but I know at least 3 of them have been removed. Adult Protective Services has removed like 3 of them from the home they were living in and all of this. And the rest of their family doesn't even know where they are, apparently. Out there in odd West Virginia. Again, now we're this is the waking dream, surrealistic unreality, deja vu all over again rears its purty little head. Odd West Virginia, and America's inbred online family. I forget their name, but it'll come to me eventually. The Whitakers. Yeah, the Whitakers. There we go. It came to me. The Whitakers. So he's also, there's a trans person called Rebecca, and it gets confusing, but a biological male who's had a very engaging personality. And Rebecca, Mark is trying to always get Rebecca into rehab. And then Mark certainly has this Messiah or a savior complex, almost certainly. And so now he's the one that put her online and to where now she can get donations. So Rebecca's not, why would she go to rehab if she could just not even, and I believe probably was a sex worker, doing, because, these people can always get their drugs. So Mark seems to think if people stop donating, then she'll go to rehab. But it's like, well, I mean, she can still get drugs. What are you talking about? So that doesn't even make sense. But, he seems to be, so she was playing a video of him talking to some woman where they're sort of trying to blame the audience for the plight of this trans person, Rebecca, as if it's their fault for donating money. Because Mark's basically like, well, I cut her off and, you people keep giving her money. And well, they like her and they like her personality, and why wouldn't they? And he can't control that anyway. And now the control freak rears its head as well. And so I forget the lady's name, but the BJ Investigates lady on her that surprise witness channel. She's really good at going in on people at times. And Mark kept saying we and speaking as if there was some group of people that were involved in this woman's life. And that's when BJ started talking about the royal we, and she doesn't like it. She's like, why am I in a group? Why have I been put in this group? You know, who's in this group? What is this? Well, you know, what's the marching orders? And I'm like, yes, thank you. Exactly. This is exactly what I've been thinking for years. It's like, can we be specific? So that's why I say the royal we. It's, you know, and what I mean is the royal we. When I use the pronoun we, that's a group. You know, I'm using a grouping, a pronoun, you know, within the context of the language, but it's supposed to be a clue to the listener that, hey, you know, this isn't really a group to include you, the listener. But for the purposes of the discussion, it kind of does. But it's not like this collective or an army or, you know, a social club, you know, that's now I'm speaking. Now it's Benton sort of speaking as the leader of this group. It's never that. And in some ways, it's sort of a discipline of, you know, humans so easily fall into that framework. And I believe it, in my opinion, it is part of the mind control that's built into this delusion, you know, the vacuous, delusory, adversarial realm of business transactions, you know, delusion and illusion, you know, the hallmarks of the realm, or some of them. It seems to me like it's not, you know, the Nazis or the U.S. government or all of these nefarious actors that invented mind control. It seems to have been built. Why wouldn't it be built into the hardware? And I don't mean the human mind physically, although maybe that's the case as well, and perhaps it is, but then certainly would be built into, which wouldn't technically be hardware, but, you know, the psychology that's designed by Moloch, right? Industrial and post-industrial society, and in fact, probably even before that, it's probably built into, you know, the delusion itself. I guess that would be more of the hardware, you know, and why wouldn't it? And back to the Kybalion notion of everything is mind, and then, you know, my coming to understand that this place it's a delusion created by the subversion of the creative force, you know, that's ever expanding, the source of all, you know, love, life, you know, all of these things. And, you know, in an animated death warmed over fashion, is giving birth to, on a perpetual, seemingly ongoing basis, you know, the notions of antithesis, which is lack of love, lack of authority, you know, lack of creative ability, and all of these things. And that's the subversion. And again, without going to the dictionary, I would still encourage people, you know, even if the listener thinks they know what subversion means, it can be helpful to sort of just remind oneself about the definitions. But yeah, to subvert what otherwise the creative force would be doing. So in order to even in order to have an experience as a human being within the context of the world or the realm, either way, that involves the subversion of the creative force. So now when we get into ideas of a father God, well, that's already in the context of delusion, because outside of the context of delusion, you know, it doesn't seem to me like where would the human thought process enter in to say, you know what, we're just sort of floating around in a cloud out here, you know, vibing and digging our own, you know, quickening spirit, and this, you know, never ending creative expansion and love and authority and justice. And, you know, there's nothing negative, there's nothing bad. And then I know, and would not be able to experience boredom, right? But then would that even be maybe not even able to experience? I don't know. That's above my pay grade. But then, so in some ways, the God or the Father God framework is, well, yeah, of course, that being would finally just get bored or want something to do and say, well, I know I'll make an earth and a Adam and an Eve and all of these things. It's nonsense. It's poppycock. That's ridiculous on its face. What are you talking about? So that's, again, we're already in the context of delusion to even, I mean, that is delusion, right? Uh, what's more delusional than coming up with all of that? Oh, but it's in a book, so it has to be true. Oh, some human beings wrote it in a book? Yeah, but they were divinely inspired by a man in the sky. Okay. Well, I mean, possible, right? But where is the proof? The words in the book is the proof. Yeah. Okay. So humans wrote the book. Yeah. But they were inspired by the thing in the sky, right? Yeah. Again, possible, but like, what are we talking about? This all sounds very delusional. And if nobody had ever interfaced with these concepts and somebody just showed up one day out of the blue and was like, hey, man, here's what it is, I don't know. How would people react to that? Although apparently Joseph Smith was able to pull it off, right? With the Latter-day Saints to some extent. So who knows? And so back to the reason why I mentioned all of this psychology, the reason for the mentioning of the psychology is, and the mind control that's built into it. And humans, to be a human being or to experience as a human, it does seem to be, while maybe not desirous of joining or being a cult member, there certainly seems to be aspects where it's quite easy to default to cult membership. That seems to be a thing. So, just to perform independently of these cult dynamics while still falling into them at times. And then the language seemingly structured, the English language seemingly structured to even further help facilitate this, and then being taught, sent to government indoctrination centers, most of us as youth, and taught all this about World War II, Nazis, and the fact is we don't know what happened. I mean, I'm pretty sure there was a war, who knows? But even then there wasn't. What do you mean? Well, it's all a dead delusion. So, there is not a Benton, there is not a Europe, there is not a Hitler, or there was not. Sure. But as long as we solve the equations based on waking dreams, surrealistic unreality, it's like, okay, now I'm willing to accept. Now Benton's willing to accept the possibility of Nazis and Hitler. So clearly, in my opinion, where that gets us, the royal us, is America, and this idea that the Nazi, there was competition for these Nazi scientists. And some will even say, well, actually, it looks to me like the Nazis won the war and convinced everybody that they were the losers. Meanwhile, to this day, Germany is one of the most powerful economies, so-called, in the world. And while Americans live under, basically living like the Chinese at this point, with the 996, 9 a.m. to 9 p.m., 6 days a week, working at a minimum, and then the gig economy and all of this. Old Benton, white nigger coolie, living in a truck, just pretty much all I do is work, except for even when I'm not working, I'm still working. It's like I have to go to the grocery store. I'm actually working because I'm doing things at the grocery store that are necessary. Right now, yeah, I could eat out of the truck stop, except no, I can't, because my health will fail once again should I eat out of the truck stop. So that's not an option. I would go hungry first. But anyway, I'm losing the plot here. Let's go back to the Nazis. So apparently, Germany adopted like a 4-day work week a long ass time ago, a 32-hour 4-day work week. And I think they've even pared it back even since then. And, what's their median household income? Are they suffering in Germany? Right. Or have they created some version of Shangri-La for themselves? I don't know. I'm asking the questions. So did they really lose two wars? World War I and World War II? Right. Don't know. But then, so is America, to me, this has to be some version of a Nazi psychological experiment. I mean, when I go into a Walmart supercenter, that to me, that is, that seems to have been designed based on, whatever research the Nazis were supposedly doing back during World War II. That's the vibe I get. You'll never convince me that's not a social experiment, especially with all of the technology. And, I do have an inside track with Walmart in a way, or I did. And technologically, they've been way ahead of the curve in certain ways. And certainly, virtually every square inch of that place is surveilled with high, HD cameras. And when you see footage on TV of like, oh, there was a crime in their parking lot, believe me, they've got HD footage of all of that. They intentionally, only release the shitty footage. They've got way higher quality. I promise you. There's no way they don't. And the servers are probably operate to, make it to where even if the government tried to subpoena the high quality footage, good luck. It ain't going to happen. Good luck finding it. And so even truck driving, I'm seeing that as it's all versions of Nazi psychological and torture. It's Nazi psychological torture. This is your your breakfast cereal called life. Mikey likes it. Because certainly to call this life unironically when what I am is one with the source of all life, but now this is also called life. Well, we're going to need separate words. Or eventually will Benton fully discipline himself and say, well, actually, this is what this world calls life is clearly a slow process of the experience of death. And you ask people, how are you? And they're like, well, I woke up, I'm above ground, another day above ground. Isn't that some acknowledgement of death itself, and that the being will be put into the ground, and one day the being will go to sleep and won't reawaken as, the performer known as Benton, right? The personality, the performer. Isn't that an acknowledgement that the process itself is not the process of life or a process of life? How could it be? Because it all depends and hinges on the waking dream, surrealistic, unreal elements. How could it ever be strictly real life? It can't. It's not possible. It's not possible. Now, the being can have a psychology and mind control and have been indoctrinated and taught to call it life and to treat it as if it were precious. It's not. It's not precious. It has no value. Of what value is this life? So when the Bible talks about give us this day our daily bread, the so-called Lord's Prayer, and the birds of the air neither sow nor reap nor gather into barns, and the whole thing, the whole spiel, take no care for what you put on. All of that, that's not rules to be Christ-like. That's an acknowledgement of what this is. That's an acknowledgement of, hey, this ain't shit in the first place. Why are you treating it as if it were all important, all encompassing? Stakes is high. Now, stakes are high in that, there is a showing and a proving and a performing. So here's where we get into, some people will take this as, oh, now it's ultra violence, it's natural born killers, it's a Clockwork Orange, and the being can just do whatever they want with no consequences. That's not that. Right. It's not that. It's to say that the realm, the world, the delusion, the illusion the government, right? The nuclear family, the town, okay, the nation. None of it amounts to a hill of beans, clearly. It's all bullshit. It's all a bunch of bullshit con game lies, a world of death and a game of lies. Actually, games of lies. And here we have John Nash, A Beautiful Mind. Game theory optimal. Game theory optimal. And your virtually every moment of your so-called daily life is based on the mathematics of John Nash, game theory optimal. Tell me again that this place doesn't have computer simulation aspects, and pretty much everybody is like, it has to be a simulation. And then I say, well, that's an acknowledgement of the waking dream surrealistic unreality, clearly. But yes, antithesis is keeping score via what seems to be some version of computer simulation with logs that in each new delusory moment, now it's here, now it's gone, now it's here, now it's gone. The illusion of time, space, location, place. Yeah, there's server logs that's critiquing the performance. Because why? Because antithesis has the goal of, at some point, pausing the game and then being able to appeal to whatever law there is to appeal to and say, look, the conventional wisdom has been that, these human beings, have at least a spark of divinity. And when they enter into this place, spiritually perfected and innocent. And then, that's been the conventional wisdom. That's thesis or proposition, and antithesis seeking to usurp and supplant, right, and replace, and to be able to pass itself off as thesis. It wants to be able to, like a courtroom scene from The Devil's Advocate, it wants to be the prosecutor and say, well, the evidence shows that even if they did leave their mama's womb into this matrix, another word for womb, and possessed of or in possession of Nancy Pelosi's MS-13 spark of divinity, again, mockery and ridicule. This little light of mine, I'm going to let it shine. More mockery and ridicule in order to induce fear, guilt, and shame. So that when the fear, guilt, and shame is removed, and this is the Nazi experiment part of things, it's to induce fear, guilt, and shame at a base level so that when the fear, guilt, and shame is removed, either partially or fully, because of the behavior of the individual, what's left in the breach will seem like love and tolerance. Because make no mistake, this realm cannot generate or provide love and tolerance and acceptance and authority and justice. It doesn't have the capacity. See? But it's passing itself off as a world of abundance. No, this is a place based on lack of abundance. What I am is abundance. There's your inversion. What else do you need to know? And so it's not to be told this by Benton and then say, oh, great, now everything's changed and my problems are solved. Absolutely not. In fact, more problems, or at least different problems. Maybe not more problems. Good luck earning a living now, right? And so that's where it's not enough to be told this. And this is where people think, oh, we just, people are waking up and just spread the knowledge and spread awareness. It doesn't work that way. The knowingness, the being must come unto the direct knowledge within themselves at an experiential level, or it doesn't amount to a hill of beans, because the delusion is so strong. The delusion will just very quickly drag them back off into delusion. And then now we have status quo, social contract, peer groups, conformity to peer groups to ensure that, and how much time in the day is even available to the being to consider such ideas, right? Or to train their mind, so until the being comes into this knowledge directly within themselves, that's the only place where meaning exists, is within the individual, within delusion and illusion. So, how many times has Benton been accused of nihilism? Oh, you sound like a nihilist. Well, it turns out there is no possibility for external meaning, because this realm only understands or functions based on a lack of meaning. So the only possibility, what I am, is meaning. There is no possibility of meaning within delusion outside of my own discrete energy sphere. And this is based on the idea that it's even possible in the first place to individuate or to break off a small chunk of an indivisible force, send it to this place, and let it have a so-called human experience. Not possible. Because like Christ points out in the Holy Bible, when accused of, well, maybe he casts out demons in the name of Beelzebub, well, Christ refers to the law, right, or the metaphysics, and says, well, if hate drives out hate, then Satan's kingdom is divided against itself, and how can it stand? Which is also an acknowledgement of, air quotes, so-called God. The kingdom, God is love. The kingdom of God or love is within you. Well, if that can be divided against itself, it can't stand, meaning it has to be indivisible. It has to always, it can't be individuated. Thus proving that my experience as Benton in this place is by definition a delusion. By definition. And it can't be changed. Nobody can do anything about that. So how can there ever, so accepting that what I am is meaning, okay, that one indivisible force, the quickening spirit, the source of all, right? No beginning and therefore no end, beyond time, beyond space. In fact, the idea of time, space, location, place exists within that one source and force of love, expansion, creation, authority, justice, abundance. There can't be meaning in a delusion with a supposedly individuated piece of that force is now. Do you see that is an inversion? Because it's all happening within the larger force from our perspective as silly little humans. So what's there to do? So nihilism contextually is real. In a context of outside of me, Benton the performer, outside of Benton's discrete energy sphere, there cannot be meaning. Now, can Benton observe, experience, and can things occur to where Benton can work with phenomena that seemingly are outside of himself, bring them within himself, and create meaning? Sure. And it's all within the context of delusion. It's all within the context of inversion. And it always equationally, again, now we're back to John Nash, game theory, optimal mathematics. The being must always mathematically and equationally solve for and reconcile for waking dream, surrealistic unreality, deja vu all over again. So yeah, if the being is willing to accept all of those caveats simultaneously and has the developed intelligence to even work with all those layers, then yes, absolutely. Absolutely. But now we get to conventional wisdom, common sense, the word of mouthing of everything, and psychologically controlled cult member bozos who just want to say, oh, well, this is all obvious. We've heard this all before. And just to treat it all as if it's very blasé. And well, yes, of course, and they're, because they're so above it all. See, psychologically, part of their psychology is having been marketed to, so that they always put themselves in an exalted or elevated position, looking down on little Benton, patting him on the head and saying, there, you finally made a little bit of progress, little Benton. It's like, no, absolutely. What are you talking about? You know, Benton's performance is levels beyond. Right. And of course it is, because that's to be tapped into true knowledge of self or self-realization, to know exactly not who I am, what I am. See? So if somebody says, who is God? Well, that's not the right question. What is God? Not who. What? And in what context? And why do you ask? See? Question everything except for conventional wisdom, common sense, and word of mouth. Isn't that an acknowledgement to not question? Isn't this idea of, well, it's common sense, doesn't that mean shut the fuck up and accept? right? Oh, it's obvious. It's common sense. And I go into a Walmart supercenter and I observe the body language and I see that most people, all they do all day long is watch what everybody else does and then mimic what everybody else does. See? So Benton is here performing most of the time based on what he truly is at his core essence. And that can't ever be to look at what other people are doing. Although at times, strategically, sure it is. Sometimes strategically, I just do what everybody else is doing in order to get what I got to get in the supercenter and escape the supercenter. But then realizing, well, it's a choice. I don't have to go into the supercenter. I could just like I choose not to eat out of the truck stop, I could choose not to go into the supercenter. I could choose not to work as a truck driver. See, in the context of the performance, there's nothing that's not a choice. See, there's never not a choice. There's nothing that's not a choice. That's the way it works. And Benton didn't make the rules. And then when Benton is gaslit by individuals in the realm itself, Benton says, well, guess what? If I hadn't have left my mama in 1975, if I'd have just stayed up in there, guess what? This place would be exactly like it is if I had never came here. So what are you talking about? And to gaslight and blame Benton, in some way, it's the realm knows what I am. This place knows what I am. And it does hold me responsible. It holds Benton responsible on some level because it says, well, we know what you are, sir. The realm knows what you are. So yeah, it would. But again, based on the world of death and the game of lies, I can just, within the game of lies, I can say, well, guess what? If old Benton was never born here, the place would be exactly the same. Or 99.9% the same. There would never have been a Benton YouTube channel, presumably. Who cares? It's for entertainment purposes only. None of it will amount to a hill of beans. However, it will amount to a hill of beans if individuals choose freely to take various aspects of this performance, right? And then perform in such a way within themselves to add a little dash of this and a little, slather of that from whatever they've learned and experienced over the course of their slow process of death. And they can, through their own creative force, if they are what I am, see, they can create meaning, but only within themselves. So now we're back to group dynamics and the seeming obsession to create what? The royal we. Say, okay, well, now click up and group up. So when I go to other YouTube channels within the so-called truth community, I see individuals on panels having a dynamic with a live chat and a host, and it's all group dynamics, which is fine. But it's a way to remain at arm's length from whatever could be accomplished internally. See, and the fact is, I won't even get into my own situation. I almost did, but it's something I've talked about for literal years on here. It's an externalization when there needs to first be internalization. If you had all of these panelists and YouTube channels and content creators and an audience that goes from one channel to another channel to another channel, and some of them come here, and that's great. Wonderful. What a blessing. But until in some of these individuals have internalized, but now what have they internalized? Many of them have internalized Satanism or service to antithesis, clearly. Right. And it's not for me to call them out necessarily, although I will. Benton will if he feels like it. And it's not a problem to be solved. People are free to, to understand that they serve one of two masters and just say, well, they choose antithesis. And the Bible itself says, better hot or cold, the lukewarm is spat out of the mouth. And that's your Christians. Your Christians play the middle, thinking they can somehow, through legalese, somehow get past a judgment that isn't even what, the actual judgment isn't even what the Bible says it is. Them's metaphors, folks. Them's metaphors. Mostly. Not across the board. And it's like, oh my God, don't criticize my Christianity. Well, I'm a big Jesus guy. You can say whatever you want about Jesus. Doesn't bother me in the slightest. Why would it? Well, Jesus said in the Bible, I didn't choose, you didn't choose me. I chose you. That's home. Christ consciousness. What I am is the way. What I am is the life. What I am is the truth. Well, if that's the case, this world isn't any of that. And then a Christian will happily tell you that, yeah, that's right, in the world, not of the world. And they go right back to their pornography, go right back to giving cell phones to their children by the time they're 10 years old. And, all of it. They'll go back to their social media, right? Their so-called conservatism, follow Donald Trump, or just whatever it is, they go right back to it. The middle, they go right back to the middle. And why are they offended when I point this out? You can say whatever you want about Jesus. I'm on record that, well, I mean, Jesus exists in the context of delusion. Therefore, strictly speaking, there never was a Jesus. In the way that there never was a Benton. Meanwhile, he's somehow speaking to you right now, apparently. Right? There was never an Apostle Paul. In some ways, these are all apocryphal stories. There is a Christ consciousness, right? There is a Holy Ghost, but only within the context of delusion, because there must be a delusion in order to even draw these distinctions, because remember, this is all part of an indivisible force that can't be divided against itself. It can't be individuated. It can't be sliced and diced. There can't be a trinity unless one is already within delusion. And once we're within delusion, who cares? But then meaning the idea of, well, unless somebody's willing to sign themselves up to being productive and bootstrapping and, defining themselves based on never ending business transactions, that somehow that's a violation, right? That's to be of this world. And this world has everyone captured who's willing to define themselves in relation to this place, to observe what this place is and say, okay, well, now in order to go along, to get along, the being must craft an identity and a graven image to uphold before Moloch and Moloch's machine within the context of industrial and post-industrial society, and then to uphold that and say, is this good enough, right? Can I get pretty pleased with sugar on top, get some Federal Reserve notes, which is why Benton operates as white nigger coolie at times, which is like, yeah, I'll just go be white nigger coolie. And it's hilarious. I'm paid way more money than a lot of you. It's $1,700 a week, $1,690 to my pocket. Virtually no expenses. Hilarious. Right. But hey, man, shut the fuck up and, load the freight up. And I don't load it, but, get the trailer loaded up and fuck off to wherever it goes to, and then park overnight like the white nigger coolie that you're performing as. Maybe there'll be somewhere across the street where you can park and not get harassed. Maybe, right? And then wander across the street about 7:30 and find out, hey, I'm Benton white nigger coolie. What do y'all want me to do? And then whatever they do to me. And the sign already says back in off the street, partner. Right? We've rolled out the red carpet. And maybe the facility understands that it can be difficult for some of these drivers like myself to actually, yeah, I can back in off the street. Somewhat, yeah, I'm able to do that. But then I still got to hit the dock, right? If they got there's a bunch of bullshit in the way, and there's, so hopefully they understand that some of us, this can be difficult. And if they have some patience and they don't breathe down my neck the whole time, well, we'll hit the dock, we'll get unloaded. And then whatever Eurotrash decides for the rest of my day holds, I'll be off to probably sitting in Monday morning, Northeast, Boston area traffic all day. Probably racing a fucking clock, to try to get done for the day. White nigger coolie. And I'm told, well, bootstrap, and this is just what life. That's not life. If that's what life is, who would want to be alive? That's death, homie. Who could listen to that and say, well, that's life? That's death. Christ said, I am the way, I am the truth, I am the life. When did Christ live that life? Oh, he was a carpenter. Not after baptism, he wasn't. There's absolutely no accounts of Christ putting hammer to nails. Now, they put hammer to nails when it came to him. And again, this realm has a sense of humor. Maybe that's the irony is, oh, they've nailed the carpenter up onto pieces of wood. You ever had them thoughts? Oh, well, that's blasphemy. No, it's not. What are you talking about? Why do I have this mind and this discernment? Oh, God knows a Father God in the sky knows every hair on my head and all of this, but doesn't understand that that's the way I think. Bullshit. It can't be both. It's one or the other, buddy. Oh, but that's right. That's the mockery and the ridicule to induce fear, guilt, and shame so that he will get in line with the dogma and the doctrine so that we can remove most of the fear, guilt, and shame, and whatever's left in the breach will seem like love, tolerance, and acceptance. Don't you get it? What I am moves beyond that. What I am quickens the spirit, and those weapons of this world cannot prosper against Benton. Now, I see them prospering against just about everybody else. Well, I don't have a dog in that fight because this is a individuated experience. This is a wholly individual experience spiritually. All I got to do is not align myself via performance with this world of death and game of lies. Have you considered my servant Job? All that is, hey, take your best shot, antithesis, because if Job falls victim to your bullshit, antithesis, I guess we never knew him in the first place. I guess we were mistaken as to his nature, so fuck him, because we can't think about him anyway. We ain't got time for death. Because what we are is too busy performing and growing and evolving and expanding and loving and providing justice and authority, everything righteous, to concern ourselves with the plight of little Job if he can't perform correctly. And that's what gets inverted and turned into dogma and doctrine, is to put the cart before the horse. It's not to, hey, here's how to behave, to not get punished. It's no, when the being operates and performs based on what they know themselves to be, they're not capable of failing those tests. They're not capable of doing anybody wrong. They're not capable of creating an injustice or participating in an injustice. Once again, an inversion. Thank you, Bluto. An acknowledgement of Benton as preacher. Much appreciated, sir. Much appreciated. And I would say the greatest skill as a preacher, in my opinion, is to mostly not preach. You know, when the being has a hammer, everything looks like a nail. I mean, there's part of me that wants to preach everywhere I go in a way. But then that's also, to do that would be pretty quickly to fall victim to the world of death and the game of lies. Oh, well, the realm will happily say, oh, look, he has skills as a preacher. Now we can get him to define himself in relation to the realm as a preacher, turn that into his job. Next thing you know, he's preaching at various 501(c) churches, and they're paying him. And now he's in the tax system, and this is his job. And now the church says, well, we don't pay taxes, but you better pay your taxes, congregants. Well, what I am can't participate in that. Are you crazy? What I am, the Benton side, the of this world side is just like, I don't even know how much longer I can drive a truck. At this point, I'm almost certain I'm not even able to work on a W-2. So now it's 1099 truck driving. Guess what? I'm never paying taxes on this. They can, anyway, I'm not even going to say what the government can do. Remember what they executed Christ for, folks: sedition. Oh, And then Christianity, within the context of this world, via doctrine and dogma, says, well, be Christ-like. But then it also adds in the Gospel of Paul, which says, well, hey, no matter how pure Saul of Tarsus's intention is, that he always serves evil anyway. So Christianity adds a layer of, well, don't make no mistake, Benton, you can't ever actually fully express righteously, but go ahead and attempt to be Christ-like. And then Christ himself didn't work a job after baptism, did not accrue tax liability, and did not handle money. So, and was executed for sedition, which is speech or actions that the government considers to be illegal because they would threaten what? The lack of authority of the government, because they expose that the government has no authority because it can't have authority if the being understands what the being is, which is to exercise and wield power over the power. What does that mean? Power over the government. See, all that government can do is say, hey, we own the dead flesh, buddy. That's what render unto Caesar means. It means let the dead bury the dead. It means the dead flesh belongs to this world of death because the dead flesh traces its origins to this place, which doesn't even exist fully. Delusion, illusion, waking dream, surrealistic unreality. So yeah, here, Caesar, take the body. Here, government, take the body. That's a major component of the Christ story that people just have seemingly never understood. Or if they have, I haven't heard anybody say it. A big part of Christ's practice and walk was to say, hey, he didn't say it overtly, he said it with his actions. The worst they could do is take his dead flesh, and then they can choose what to do with the dead flesh. It's dead anyway. Christ was the way, and I mean in the context of his performance, Christ is the way, the truth, and the life. Christ knew that. Christ understood that while he was here. And individuals absolutely can do that. How? By transcending the limitations of the dead flesh, by facilitating the entrance, the baptism in the Holy Spirit or Holy Ghost, and the resurrection of the risen Christ within them, Christ representing victory over the dead flesh. And in fact, victory via being not able to experience defeat. And so that's the path of the warrior. The art of war says the warrior first places themselves beyond the possibility of defeat. Well, guess what? What I am will never know defeat. So to go on what ended up being around a 15-year process of, internal spiritual growth and development to eventually uncover the perfected path that lies within. See, a lot of folks will never spiritually surrender through the yin form or the feminine or the passive because they need a guarantee of a reward. See, Benton did all of this and understood from day one, well, it's possible to put in 15 years of work and to never find what is presumably being sought, to be okay with that, to accept and trust and surrender to the reality that that's beyond the control of Benton within the context of this place and this performance. And that's okay. So was it the effort that was rewarded, or was it the trust that was rewarded? The yin, the feminine. Meanwhile, this realm, and especially America and the vacuous, delusory, adversarial realm of business transactions, teaches that anything achievable is only achievable through assertive, aggressive, dominant means. There's your yang, there's your masculine, there's your, assertive, dominant, your energetic, your initiator, right? Go out there and make the world your bitch. Right, confidently stride onto the world stage and strut your stuff, but in the context of creating and crafting a graven image to uphold before Moloch and Moloch's machine in the context of industrial and post-industrial society and business transacting, and we only measure in money. Well, that's all dead. That's as dead as the dead flesh. Oh, but it all seems to be alive because the money spins. That's called animated death, death warmed over. Guess what? The flesh is animated death, death warmed over. The flora is animated death, death warmed over. The fauna is animated death, death warmed over. The oxygen, the fucking ground, the streams, the birds of the air, all of it is animated death warmed over. Everything that traces its origins to this place is dead by definition, including my own physical body, which doesn't even exist because science shows apparently it's all vibrating energy anyway. Of course it is, because it's all within the indivisible force. And now what is this? Awareness and consciousness experiencing what? Itself? And then those who have not developed the intelligence, those who haven't spent the time to develop themselves individually, can very quickly get confused into thinking, well, that means that they, as performer, are air quotes so-called God. It's like, well, no, clearly not. Because to skip to that conclusion without understanding and being able to work with all these various other aspects and layers, right? That doesn't work. So, of course, the being reaches an erroneous conclusion. How could they not? But thank you for the compliment. I appreciate it. Like I've said before, I walk around all day in Los Angeles or wherever, and every once in a while I spaz out a little bit and give some kind of speech or do whatever I do, autistic screeching on some level, and nobody notices when I'm not doing that. See, that's an inversion. It's only like, oh my God, there's that crazy guy saying a bunch of true things that we don't want to hear again, comically at the top of his lungs in some way in public. But then that's to be guilty, but nobody notices when a week goes by and I've silently passed him on the sidewalk 10 times that week and said not a fucking word to anybody. So in fact, skill as a preacher, a lot of it is to just mostly not preach and to know when to preach, to understand when is it appropriate to preach. Now I'm wondering, is my clock correct here? See, it's 7 o'clock, and for some reason, I'm looking at the wrong phone. See, it's 7, but I'm looking at a phone that's on a different time zone. No wonder. It's like, wait a minute. Excuse me. Yeah, 7. So anyway, I think I'm done. I think I'm done with the preaching and the spiritual side of things. So we can hang out for a few, and then I don't like to bum rush people. If their workday starts at 7, I don't like to bum rush them the moment they walk in the door. So out of what consideration? So we'll wait 15 to 20 minutes and wander over because, it might take me a little time to back up. So if I get a head start on the backing, that's probably better for everybody. Because one thing about the Northeast, typically they're right on the ball. If you got an 8 a.m. appointment, they're right on top of it. Whereas like Louisiana or Arkansas, they can tell you 8 a.m. and then, you might not even get a dock door till 10. And then, if they fuck around too much, next thing you know, they're gone to lunch and your ass ain't out of there till 1 p.m. Right. The Northeast ain't on that program. They're trying to get done. Yeah. See, there's already somebody, backing in. I just opened the window. There's already somebody backing in off the street. And see, I'm pointed the wrong way. So what I'm going to have to probably do is go out to the road and get straightened out and then back up like even further. We'll see what dock they put this guy. And I wonder if he's got a 7 a.m. He must have a 7 a.m. because it's just now 7. And since that's a sleeper truck, J.R. Shugel. That looks like Swift, though, pulling J.R. Shugel. But either way, no, it's not. Yeah, J.R. Shugel. Probably they got one dock for, over the road sleeper truck. So I'm going to see how bad is this going to be. What am I in? What am I in for here? Hmm. If I had a decent camera, I'd show you, but the phone is not, it's so far away, you wouldn't be able to tell what was going on anyway. Now here comes XPO day cab, and he's trying to go in forward, see? And this is another thing, he's not even 53 foot. And so what else happens with over the road drivers with fucking bigger trucks, sleeper trucks with a way longer wheelbase, and you can't see out of the back of them like you can a sleeper truck, a day cab, is the dock people will pretend like it's the same experience. Like a guy with a 45 footer in a day cab, it's not, we're not doing the same thing when I back into the dock and they back into the dock. Oh, he's going to back in. Okay. He's actually going to follow the rules. Old XPO, which is I believe they're the largest in whatever category they're in. I think they're the largest carrier in the country. And he's blindsiding. See, that's what I'm saying. If I had his setup and I was pointed the wrong way, like I'm would be if I don't back all the way down the street, he can just blindside, no problem. If I tried to blindside, I already see a pole, I'd probably be taken out. But then a lot of these dock work, some of the shitty, hateful dock people would just pretend like, oh, well, we got 100 drivers a week that do. Everybody else does it. And I'm like, yeah, they're driving day cabs and they're pulling 45 footers. What are you talking about? Oh, no, they're not. No, they're not. Oh, okay. Well, yeah, I understand. Owner operators who've been doing in trucking for 30 years who are experts. Yeah, sure, of course. I can't be expected to know. And by the way, when they were 3 to 4 years into their career, they also couldn't do what you now see them doing. And I don't even know where the first guy went. He had to go so far down. I don't even know what dock he's going to. I guess it don't matter. And then, to accept and expect the spiritual attack where, maybe nice people work here, right? Maybe nice, caring, loving people work here, perhaps. But if not, it's going to be hateful people with personality disorders and infested with demons, seeking to spiritually attack old Benton to please their master, right? So Benton's really only function in that is to be prepared, the so-called whole armor of God and all that, right? Hmm. Yeah, buddy. You know. Yeah, this is white nigger coolie activities right here. And it's hilarious too because a lot of times I'm pretty much the only like just regular white dude around, and pretty much regular black dudes. It's kind of the same thing at this point. You know, a lot of times, but especially if you make the delineation between black Americans, born here, and myself, a lot of times I'm the only white dude around. Just full fucking stop. A lot of the time. It doesn't bother me, but sometimes, especially with the way things have gotten with, blaming white people for everything and the hatred towards white people, sometimes I want to say, like, can't y'all see I got to be a little bit different if I'm the only fucking white dude here? Y'all are trying to turn me into the Mr. Peanut for the fucking white supremacist, establishment or whatever. It's like, meanwhile, I'm the only one here. So how the fuck isn't that a clue that I'm probably a little different? No, nobody else is here. What did I lose the fucking rock paper scissors and they sent me down here? Like, what is this? What have I done? if we're going to put me in the context of, white privilege or whatever, it's like, okay, well, what am I guilty of that they sent my ass down here? Then it's like, it does not compute if you really think about it. I can be in the Love's truck stop in Houston somewhere, and they're looking at me kind of crazy, and I'm just looking at them like, don't y'all realize I'm the only white dude here? It's like, that has to mean something. But yeah, there's some white people that work here, but I mean, like, other than that, I'm like pretty much the only white dude around, and then maybe there's another one, but here and there. But that's got to be worth something. But it's, not treated as if it was worth something. Talked to my mom yesterday. Now she says she's off of the antidepressants, which means, the worry and the guilt comes back, because I could tell dealing with her before, I can tell when she's on that stuff because she's not her normal worry wart, guilt ridden self. Right. And, I found ways to mention it before, and she would be like, "Oh, it's nothing. My doctor said I can go off of it anytime I want." And I'm like, "Well, if it's nothing, I mean, it has to have an effect." I didn't say it, but it's like, well, clearly it's got an effect. And I don't know if she listens to some of these streams. Maybe she does. Who knows? But she said she got off of it. And of course, now that means the worry's back and all of this. So she was freaking out about my baby sister dating some old dude, older than her anyway. I guess she's what, like 43, maybe something like that. Probably about 43. I think he's like 58. And I know Highly Suspect has a grown daughter, but I think she's closer to like mid 20s, and she was dating some guy who was well into his 40s. It's like, yeah, that's there's no men or there, I mean, there's men are destroyed, man. There's like none of these dudes to go around. Pickens is slim, and I like the true crime when I can stand it. And here's another sleeper truck. Where's he going? Oh, he's turning in where I'm at. Hopefully, I'm not too in the way. He's coming in hot. Yeah, he had plenty of room. And just what some of these women are doing to try to make ends meet. Single moms, and you can blame the single mom all you want, but society has done this to them in some way. Society, certainly, Moloch's machine has decided at a certain point that it prefers single moms and all of this, and so-called broken homes, but in order to serve its purposes. But some Atlanta police officer, like ended up going to prison for some very serious crime because he answered an ad for like this, some very erotic massage type activities in some woman's apartment. And he ended up forcing himself on her, apparently. And so this it's that Shields of Shame channel, which the content creator seems like a total bozo to me. This is where I'm not as into people and personalities, but he does a really good job of getting, these interrogations and getting all of these materials that a lot of times they just claim that they don't have them or they just won't turn them over. But, he's in their face and he's pressuring them every step of the way because the law says they have to release a lot of this stuff. They're supposed to anyway. And so it was like 3 separate videos of this guy getting, interrogated by the cops and just realizing how many women go through this sort of thing, you know. And I'm not justifying their behavior. I'm justifying the situation they find themselves in to try to, make ends meet and pay the bills and raise their children. And just how creepy and weird a lot of these guys are. He's a black fella, but I never realized there were so many creepy, weird black dudes. I mean, is this always been a thing, or I don't know? It wasn't my experience as a young person growing up in a, you know, the town was more 50-50 when I was a kid, but it's certainly majority black now. But um, yeah, just bizarre. And see that when the cops are interrogating their fellow cop, their attitude is, this is her job. Whether or not it's strictly legal, the fact is America, and this is in Georgia, the fact is, unless they're trying to catch her breaking the law, she's going to be treated like a victim, more almost like a sex trafficking victim, even if she's sex trafficking herself. Like, she's not fair game because she may or may not be breaking the law. They're talking to him like, this is her job. So what he was trying to say is that it seemed like she was into it, and they're just describing what the massage is, and they're saying, yeah, she was doing her job. You paid her to do a job. She was doing the job you paid her to do. And he, not you, the listener, but this guy, this R wordist, and then he apparently took that as, well, she's into me and she wants something more, right? Which apparently, who knows if she's that or not, but it was not her normal practice to have intercourse for money, I guess is the only way to say it. Yeah, there's old Shugel still trying to back in. Yeah, I can tell this is already going to be, unless he's already unloaded. I guess that's possible. No, he's still trying to back in. All right, I got to go get down to business because this might take a while. But hang on, I want to see if I can figure out. I want to see what they got him doing. I think maybe they had him pull up so XPO could get in first. That's probably what it is. Or he had to wait for a doc to be available, maybe. But this is just bullshit. Like this idea of the greatest country and blah blah blah. Why are we using facilities that are so old that the physical property can't accommodate the size of the trucks now? It's like, this is crazy. And again, if everybody leaves me alone and gives me enough time to figure out what I'm doing, it won't be a problem. It's when people want to intervene because they panic and they freak out because they need to feel secure. They can't feel secure when Benton's out there doing things unconventionally because normies rush in to normalize everything that is not incongruous, and Benton's backing is incongruous. So it freaks them out. And in order to achieve stasis within themselves as NPC normies, now they need to try to take over and try to walk around and give me hand signals and guide me. And it's like, I just tell them, I'm like, look, if you try to do this, it's going to take longer. Because it's always based on this, well, we're in a big fat hurry and you're holding everything up. Okay, if that's the case, that means y'all want this done as quickly as possible. And the way for this to be done quickly as possible is every time I look in my mirror and there's somebody in my mirror, even if they're standing there on the dock with their hands on their hips, it makes it take longer. Period. End of story. Now we can say, well, it shouldn't, and it's common sense, and it's this. Yeah, you can say that till you're blue in the face. It takes longer. Period. And nobody can do anything about that. So if everybody fucks off and leaves me alone, eventually I'll just do it as quickly as I'm able to do it. Otherwise, we are disproving this idea that we're in a big fat hurry. Nobody's in a big fat hurry. It's just that their internal space is disturbed because they can't normalize what's happening because it's incongruous. And because they're NPC normies, they will do anything that they think will. So to them, it's normal for somebody to try to assist and guide. It's like, no, wait a minute. I'm able to back in there. I just can't back in there and have it look the way y'all expect. Just like I can go in there and speak English in a radio announcer deliberate fashion, or I can talk in my native tongue. I can't just conversationally speak, with a flat, no regional accent. We can go We can go radio announcer. Now I'm wondering if he's got a 7:30 appointment because he's just sitting there waiting. Yeah, anyway, I'm out. Bye.